How we breathe matters. But why? Today we're going to talk about biomechanics, respiration, neurology, asymmetries in the human body, and impacts of how we breathe upon sensations in the body, aches and pains, different tenderness points, how it impacts sports and our posture. To begin, we'll initially connect with our breath and talk a little bit about our abdominals. And then I'm going to draw a little bit for you to help connect to what we're feeling in our bodies, to what's actually going on. And then we'll go on and talk a little bit more about gait biomechanics, neutral, stance, swing, postures, and positioning. So to begin, let us go ahead and lay on our back. We can go ahead and place one hand on our belly and one hand on our chest. Doesn't matter which hand, either hand is okay. I would like you to take a nice big inhale through your nose and then a sigh out your mouth. So inhale through your nose, big hot air, sigh out your mouth like you're fogging up a mirror. 3 breaths, big inhale, sigh. Big inhale, sigh. Just begin to feel where the air is going. Don't try and force it anywhere. Just try and sense and feel where the air is going in your body. One more good breath. Wonderful. So when we're thinking about engaging our abdominals, I would like us to think about actually pulling the rib cage down. So if you put your thumbs on the bottom of your rib cage, so you can kind of feel where it's hard, right, versus where it's squishy. So bottom of the ribs are your thumb, and then your fingertips can be placed on your hips. So you have 2 points of contact on either side of the body. So when you breathe out, you want to feel those 2 points of contact coming together, or the distance between your hips and your ribs should come together. So if I kind of super exaggerate this, if I really pop my rib cage up, right, you can see my ribs here, that when I breathe out, you can see that my rib cage moves back down and in. And I will do a little bit of a pelvic tilt, pulling my hips into more neutrality, that you can see that my hips and my rib cage become closer together. So let's go ahead and try that. Nice big breath in, big breath out. Try to sense and feel the engagement of your abdominals, feeling a rib cage drop back down and in. And again, big inhale and exhale. Last one, big inhale, big breath out, trying to feel that rib cage drop. And good, wonderful, nice. So when we think about engaging, my hair's crazy. When we think about engaging our arms, we want to be able to sense and feel the rib cage moving down and pulling into those abdominal muscles, right? That if my fingertips are your abs and my thumbs are your spine, that when we just kind of suck the belly button in towards the spine, yes, you can create some tone and tension, but if we actively pull and engage into those abdominals, and then you kind of pull in towards the spine, that's going to be a lot stronger support than kind of just like pulling the tummy muscles in. So if we think about position, position of the body matters and really impacts the muscles that we recruit. So if we have a person, they are looking this way, right? This is a side view of them. If we think about their rib cage, that's the bottom of the rib cage, right? Rib cage is up here. There are all the ribs. Diaphragm, muscle that helps us breathe, attaches onto the front, domes up, attaches onto the back. Then we have our pelvic floor, our muscle that stabilizes our hips. We want to make sure that we're staying in a nice, strong, stacked position so that any movement we're doing with our arms and our legs, we're able to efficiently recruit into our glutes and our hamstrings, our lower abs and our pelvic floor, our side abs. We can get some serratus, we can get some mid-trap, some good upper back. And so we're this nice, strong triangle of support. So any movement we do with our arms and our legs is supported by those muscles. So if we look at another option of posture and position, so similarly, if someone looking that way. So when you lay down on the ground, you might have felt that your rib cage was flaring up, or that you could really sense and feel that bottom of your rib cage, that we're going to have a little bit of a rib flare. Drawn a little bit exaggerated, right? So ribs are still up here. So what that does is actually flattens out your diaphragm, right? So if this is your spine, this is your rib cage, right? Diaphragm's underneath it. So if the bones are closer together, the soft tissue or the diaphragm is going to be domed. But if that rib cage is popped up in the front, it's going to pull and flatten that soft tissue that's in between the spine and the front of that rib cage. So this person has a lot flatter diaphragm, or a pancake. This person that has a rib cage that's pulled back down and in has more of a domed diaphragm. And what that does is that really impacts whether that muscle is being a respiratory muscle or more of a postural muscle where it's just holding up your structure. This one, first again, inhale, nice big breaths. This one, short little breaths. Yeah. So we have quite the will to survive. So our body is able to adapt and figure out how to breathe in a different way. If this breathing muscle gets essentially out of position to be an efficient breathing muscle, the body is going to recruit and compensate and use other muscles to try and lift the chest to get air into the body so that we can survive. So if you've ever felt any tone and tension in your neck, oftentimes that can be contributed to the fact that our diaphragm is out of position. So our neck has now become our breathing muscle. We breathe 20 to 22,000 times a day. So it's like you're doing 22,000 little shrugs. So yes, we will build extra tone and tension in a muscle that's doing a job that it's not meant to do. This can also descend our pelvic floor at the muscle that stabilizes the hips here, and you end up in this more broken egg position. So you're more likely to recruit into a neck and a trap, into a low back, be very quad dominant, tenderness in knees, have tight calves, super tight hips. And or this more backwards triangle of recruitment. So thinking about our posture and position really does matter, and it determines what polyarticular chain of muscle recruits. Polyarticular chain of muscle is just many chain of muscle, right? That a specific chain of muscles are all recruited that need to learn to work together. So when we talk about human movement, we want to think about biomechanics, respiration, and neurology. So biomechanics means like human movement, respiration, so breathing in and out, the biomechanics of breathing, and then neurology. Neurology, like our nerves, our nervous system that are throughout the body that helps determine different release of hormones, different emotions, right? Whether we're in our fight, flight, freeze, or our rest, digest, and rejuvenate neurological state. So if we think about full human movement, we had someone that was in, say, a deep squat on that end, and then someone, let's say, the cow of yoga. So if you look at those two postures on a biomechanical level, this person is in more flexion. Biomechanical level, this person is in more extension. On a respiratory level, this person is in more of an exhalated state. Right, as we exhale, our systems flex. This person is a more inhalated. And on a neurological level, this person is going to be more parasympathetic. This person will be more sympathetic. This person's in more fight, flight, and freeze. This is more rest, digest, and rejuvenate. So it's not that one of these postures are bad or good or better or worse. We just come into issue when we get stuck in one of these postures or positions. That inhaling and exhaling are both important parts of the breathing cycle that we need to be able to extend and flex. And sympathetic is not bad, it's just bad if you're chronically sympathetic, you're chronically stressed, you're chronically inflamed. So if we look about this person here, on a biomechanical level, they're stuck in extension. They're stuck inhalated, right, with a rib cage popped up, means a flat diaphragm with lots of stale air in your human. So they're stuck in an inhalated state. Right, versus this person that has a rib cage that can pull back down and in, they're able to inhale from a fully exhalated state. And so this person is going to be a lot more sympathetic as well, especially determined by that shorter breath. That shorter breathing signals the body that you are stressed out. And your hormones and everything, different circadian rhythms, all of our rhythms of our human are going to respond as if we are in that fight, flight, and freeze, sympathetic, chronic, stressed out human. So ideally, we want to be able to operate from this space of neutrality, that depending on demand, we can extend, inhale, or become sympathetic, or we can flex, exhale, and become parasympathetic. And that we want to be able to adapt depending on external influences, depending on the demand. That we want to be able to manage this position so we can have more of that horizontal 360 expansive breathing instead of inhaling up into our neck and then descending out into your gut, which is less ideal. So let's take this a little bit deeper. So when we think about why this would happen, that this happens, this pattern is in every human, because every human is asymmetrical, determined by organ placement and what the soft tissue does around that. So if we think about our diaphragm and our muscle that helps us breathe, that's underneath our rib cage. On the left side, it is underneath your heart, and on the right side, it is domed up over your liver. So this is your left, this is your right. We have a heart, and we have a liver. So on the left side, it's under the heart. Right side, it's over the liver. So there's a bigger dome of the diaphragm on the right side, right? So this is your rib cage. Right, your collarbones there, heads up here. So in looking at what does that asymmetrical positioning due to our biomechanics, respiration, and neurology. So we can look at that each breath that we take, we actually pull more into the right musculature of the body. So when we think about gait biomechanics, so walking or running, thinking about when we are standing on the leg, when we are swinging the leg, our body positioning is doing different things if it's standing or swinging. So in gait biomechanics, we want to go a right stance, left swing, left stance, right swing, right? And the transition zone is that kind of neutral point that we want to be able to alternate and reciprocate back and forth. Yeah. So when we look at this, stay with me, this person is in stance, and this person is in swing. Okay, so movement checks and balances are asymmetries. So when we sit all day long, we pull ourselves more out of balance so that we're more dominant in that right side. We're pulled into our right side. So we're in a right stance, left swing. But we still have to stand on our left leg. We still have to swing our right leg. So our hips end up tilting forward and externally rotating in that more broken egg position to help compensate and figure out how to move the body through space and manage gravity and manage that airflow. Lots of times we will see that forward head posture, right? A forward head posture and more rounding, right? A lot of times we blame this on technology and computers, or yes, what we do habitually every single day will impact our posture and position, but also will our 20 to 22,000 repetitions of breathing. That if I looked at that person only on a biomechanical level, here, I would be like, oh, that person needs rows. That person needs I's, Y's, and T's. We need to strengthen the back muscles to pull our structure back into a better posture. Or yes, that definitely is part of it, but it's only a third of the piece, the puzzle piece. Third of the puzzle. So if we think about that person, right, that's rounded forward, head forward, that unless they learn to facilitate air up into their chest here, we are just jamming those shoulders back by trying to get those muscles to turn on. If we simply learn to inhale into our chest, our shoulder is going to go back into position, and we're going to be able to strengthen the back muscles from a more optimal position. Oftentimes you'll see that too because our head will follow what our hips do to manage gravity. So if our hips are tilted forward and our rib cage is popped up, our head has to come forward, right? If it's back here, it's going to be blocking the airway. So a forward head posture keeps the airway open, and it also allows us to manage gravity and not fall over. So when we look at posture, position, and trying to create optimal posture, we have to think about that respiration as well, because our diaphragm is essentially the steering wheel of our structure. That if it's popped up, got some stale air, or more extended, that's going to determine what muscles we're able to access and what compensation and overuse patterns we fall into. Versus we have a more optimally positioned diaphragm, that's going to allow us to breathe without compensation and overuse, and that we're going to be able to access a right stance, left swing, neutrality, left stance, right swing, that we are going to be able to alternate and reciprocate without compensation or overuse. So while thinking about any shoulder injuries, oftentimes if you go to traditional physical therapy, you're going to get some internal and external rotations with a band. Great, strengthen things. But if we know that rib cage is back and there's not optimal air underneath that shoulder, you're going to be strengthening it in a poor position. Now, if we can learn to posture and position and get the shoulder in a good position by facilitating air correctly, then we're able to strengthen it in a way better position. Another thing, that you can be strong in a less optimal position. Think of like a football player, like a huge lineman that is so extended that kind of waddles when he walks, that he is stuck in a swing position, that he is tilted forward, externally rotated, ready to go. But you're more likely to injure, your backs or your hips or your knees or your neck. All of these things that are in compensation and overuse. It's not that swing is bad, right? We need to swing our leg in order to walk, but we also need to learn to stand on our leg. So when we look at these compensations, we will often see someone will be stuck in a right stance, left swing, or they'll have gone even farther into that compensation world and they'll be stuck in a swing position. But that person that's in swing, the left is always going to be more externally rotated, the right side is always going to be more internally rotated because of the positioning of the diaphragm, that every breath we pull more into the right, even if the right side has compensated into that more anterior tilt as well. And so we are working with biomechanics, respiration, and neurology through the lens of gait biomechanics. We are able to sense and feel our posture and position, whether it's in stance, whether it's neutral, whether it's in swing, to be able to manage that position, to manage your asymmetries. That's why walking is so good for humans, because movement checks and balances our asymmetries. So when we sit all day, we push ourselves even more into that lateralized way of functioning and of compensate and overuse, and I've got pain here and aches and pains, and why do I have so many aches and pains when I'm not even exercising, I'm just living my life? Well, because we are in that compensation, overuse, super asymmetrical, pulled out of position way of moving through the world and managing gravity and managing those internal pressures. We can see this in the sports recovery position. Have you ever had a coach say to you, like, if you're really tired, you're like you put your hands on your knees, your elbows on your knees, and they're like, put your hands over your head. What does that do? Hands over the head pops up a rib cage, flattens a diaphragm, so you're actually getting less air into the human, creating more tone and tension. Right? So often what our bodies naturally do actually can be better for us. That if you're tired, putting your hands on your knees, right, kind of that like recovery posture of like, oh my goodness. But guess what that does? That pulls a rib cage back down and in, expands posterior mediastinum so you can get a good full inhale from a fully exhalated state, because a rib cage is down versus up if your hands are over your head, right? You can fully inhale and exhale and optimally recover. Sometimes coaches will say then, oh, then the other team will see that we're tired and it's a mind game. Well, then perfect. They see you resting like that, they're going to think you're tired, but little do they know that you are actually recovering way faster because your diaphragm is in a more optimal position to then foster and facilitate that air without compensation and overuse and trying to use a pancake diaphragm to breathe. You can see this with running. If you are a runner, oftentimes you'll see people have a right toe whip. Right? When they're running, they're kind of doing something funky with their right toe to whip it around. A lot of times we see that because we are pulled into a right stance, left swing. And that right stance position is trying to swing. So the femur's having to do something kind of funky to get that swing to happen. Have you ever been in Pilates or yoga and they do spinal rolls or a bridge and they're like, and now lower down vertebrae by vertebrae. And you're like, wonderful, vertebrae by vertebrae, ka-thunk. Or like a whole chunk of your spine seems to rest down at once, and no matter how hard you try or how hard you work, you just can't articulate that point because you're stuck in extension. Your diaphragm is putting you there. The way you breathe is putting you there. But you're not going to be able to go vertebrae by vertebrae until you more optimally position your diaphragm, integrate some abs, integrate an anchor, some hamstring and adductors to sense and feel your heels, your big toe. Get that solid anchor to facilitate that proper breath and be able to go into extension, inhalation, become more sympathetic, and full flexion, exhalation, and parasympathetic, and to know what it is to be neutral. You ever had SI pain or piriformis pain? So if we think about our hips, right, my fingers are the front of your hips, my thumbs are the back. So if our hips are tilted forward and externally rotated, what just happened? The top of my hips moved farther away from each other, but the bottom of the hips came closer, right? So if I tilt forward and actually rotate, you can see that my wrists, or the bottom of your hips, move closer together. So that descends the pelvic floor, that pulls into that piriformis and can jam into that SI joint. And then if we're only working on a biomechanical level, doing like clamshells and glute bridges, we are just jamming into that broken egg position, trying to find stability. If we integrate respiration, we're going to be able to ascend that pelvic floor to pull the hips into more neutrality so that they are able to start to sense and feel that alternation and reciprocation when they're walking, so that it's not just jammed into a certain position and then you're having SI pain and piriformis pain and all amounts of pain. You'll see this with people with hypermobile joints as well, right? Their joints are hypermobile. I don't have hypermobile joints. But that they're looking for stability by jamming into their joints, where they're not able to use the soft tissue, the muscles above and below the joints, where they're moving on their joints. They're moving, jamming into their knees, jamming into their ankles, jamming into those elbows. Right? They're trying to find stability, managing gravity and internal pressures by jamming into that joint because they don't have access to the muscles that they need to help facilitate that stability. All right, this person's going to have lengthened hamstrings. They're going to have lengthened abdominals. It's a lot harder to sense and feel and integrate those muscles. So oftentimes, if you've ever said, oh, my hamstrings are tight, or that you're sensing tightness in the backside of your legs, that we're perceiving it as, oh, the muscle is short, I need to stretch it. Because that was the protocol for a long time. But we are wiser now and know how to integrate all of our systems together to work with the body. That we know that hamstring is in a lengthened position, and that neurological sensation that we are getting, our body is saying, hey, please stop stretching me. I'm already operating at end range. Please stop stretching me. I can't stretch anymore. So that if we learn to pull the body into more neutrality, that's going to shorten that hamstring and decrease that feedback that we're getting that it's tight, and be able to balance the body. But the body is very complex, that pain is not weakness leaving the body. Pain is information for us to understand what our body is trying to tell us. We can see this with plantar fasciitis, TMJ, jaw pain, that it all correlates to the positioning of our diaphragm. Our diaphragm is such a huge muscle that is the steering wheel for our structure, right? Steering wheel of like a huge bus, right? We go this way with the steering wheel. The rest of the bus is going too, right? And we can go into compensation and overuse and aches and pains, or learn how to manage and integrate our abs, to dome that diaphragm, to use that diaphragm as a respiratory muscle, so we can have that 360 expansive breath, so that we're not having neck pain, we're not having back pain, we're not so quad dominant, we're not having hip pain, right? That we can learn to manage our postures and positions. Though they are going to be different, right? Our inhaled state looks different than our exhaled state. That our right stance looks different than our left stance. Our stance on both legs looks different than if we're standing on one leg or the other. But of knowing that walking and moving helps us check and balance those asymmetries. And there are a whole host of techniques and tools that were developed by posture restoration that help us learn how to foster and facilitate that air, that expansive breath, integrating our side abs, our lower abs, being able to anchor in some hamstrings, some adductors, and bringing in that neurological piece of being able to sense and feel where we are in space, and for the body to feel safe to inhibit or calm down overuse, honed up muscles, to then reposition to sense and feel a new position in your body so that you can strengthen that position, so that we are able to, depending on demand, extend and inhale, become more sympathetic, or flex, exhale, become more parasympathetic. That biomechanics, respiration, neurology, that system integrative approach to helping the human body move through space, feeling grounded and free with a steadiness and ease without compensation and overuse and extra tone and tension of, oh, I hold my stress here. Well, maybe, but you also are breathing with your neck. So you're doing 20 to 22,000 shrugs every single day. If you learn to breathe with your breathing muscle, your neck doesn't have to do that job anymore, and it's gonna feel great. So, this is a lot. That learning to integrate these tools and techniques was the most amazing thing I've ever learned. And it's had the biggest impact on helping and serving my clients quickly get out of pain and be able to feel the correct movements, correct muscles in movements. Oftentimes when we are stuck in an extended anteriorly tilted, I call it broken egg position. Again, not a bad position, just less ideal when we get stuck there. And you're trying to have them do a glute bridge, they can't feel their glutes. You can be the best cuer in the world. You still can't cue them to get those glutes on. Because they're not in an optimal position to recruit into those fibers. That of the posture and positioning of our bones does matter about what soft tissue engages. That biomechanics, respiration, neurology matters. How we breathe matters. Because it impacts our in-body sensation of being alive, our daily experience of living in a human body. And it's breathing. Breathing optimally with those 20 to 22,000 reps. Are anchored, some hamstrings and some abs. So we can have that 360 expansive breath. So we can feel more relaxed and more at ease in our day. on a hormonal and emotional level. That short breath, compensatory breathing, extended patterning just feeds into that chronic stress. Chronically stressed out human on every level: biomechanics, respiration, neurology, mental, emotional, cognitive processing. That there's so much we can do to help our bodies sense and feel grounded and free. How we breathe matters because it impacts our in-body sensation of being alive. That we can feel vibrant, filled with vitality. That we can move our body feeling grounded and free. Thank you for spending this time with me, and hopefully you learned a few things. If you have questions, I would love to have conversation with you. This is something that I am very passionate about, of helping people understand how important it is to breathe, and to breathe from an optimal position, to inhale from a fully exhalated state. That working with our body, that our body will work with us, versus feeling like we are jamming it and forcing it into postures and positions. That your body loves and cares about you so much that its only job is to keep you alive and to care for you. It's time we care for our bodies. It's time we care for our bodies and our brains through the lens of integrating all of our systems, through the lens of gait biomechanics, of that asymmetrical nature of human. Thank you.